Hello, everyone. Catchy1383 with Catchy Gaming. And after spending a few days with Mario Kart World, I decided to talk about it. So, I'm not entirely where to start. I am enjoying it, particularly the free roam mode. That is actually ticking the right boxes, so to speak, in terms of my enjoyment and what I wasn't exactly expecting out of a Mario Kart game. I mean, I knew it was there, but it definitely hit the spot because I don't particularly care for the racing aspect, as weird as that sounds. Maybe when I was younger, I did, and I used to be able to play regularly with friends when we all had Nintendo systems and we could play games and then play against each other whenever we went to each other's houses. I'm the only one with the Nintendo Switch 2. They're not really particularly interested in Nintendo games at this point. So the whole racing thing, yes, I could play online with others, but I just don't want to or care to. So I guess I'll start with the Grand Prix stuff because that's what I did initially, sort of getting used to the controls. And one of the things that kind of irritated me is they didn't have like a practice course. I mean, they have a manual telling you about techniques and stuff like that, but maybe having like a little confined area where they purposely set up some of these mechanics so you know what they look like and feel like would have probably did the game some service, along with or maybe doing what they did with Mario and the Luigi Brothers ship, where you could practice the move when you viewed it in the menu. Something similar to that. Because some of these mechanics are new and they didn't really explain them, and you kind of needed to know how they worked in order to pull off some of the tricks in the game. So let's start with the Grand Prix. I only did a 50cc at this point. Maybe I'll eventually get to the other CCs, but for now, I'm just at the 50cc. Mainly because when it comes to the racing parts, some of these courses feel weird. Like there's sections of them where there's big, huge, long stretches of track, and I don't see any way to boost or go faster without going way outside the boundaries of the road, which still slows you down. There's probably something there, and I'm kind of wondering if they want you to do what they do in Crash Team Racing, where you boost even in a straightaway by hitting the R button and then tilting the control back and forth to build a boost. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if I'm gonna like actually doing the races because I despise that about Crash Team Racing. Was always having to boost, even on like the easiest difficulties, just to stay ahead. But that's not the case with Mario Kart. I mean, it's fairly easy to win first place on 50cc, so it's not that big of a deal. So one thing I sort of didn't really point out, but you probably saw a little bit during the character selection, and that's kind of the number of characters. There's probably more that I know I haven't unlocked, and I probably have to do more Grand Prix races in order to unlock said characters. But there's some bizarre choices in characters. So I'm just going to bring that up. You can see that they have a lot of characters this time around, but then some of the choices of characters that they do have, like a cheap or a sidestepper there, and there's many others. It feels odd to have them as a racing character. Yes, they're villains, but a cheap, which has no arms or legs, and not to mention several other Bowser minions. It feels a bit of a like a stretch to have them as racing characters, especially in light of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I don't know about the Wii version that has Link, and also the Inklings from Splatoon. Maybe they should have dipped back into that well, but I kind of have like maybe a hypothesis or maybe a slight prediction in regards to that. The other thing is they have a lot of repeat characters, for lack of a better way of putting it. That being, it's just Luigi or Peach or Mario with different skins instead of just selecting the character, then selecting what skin you want for that character. It just fills up the menu, in my opinion, with way too much going on instead of just simplifying it by selecting what skin you want, depending on what character you've selected. But that's just those are like minor gripes. They don't really affect the game negatively in any shape or form. Well, maybe a little bit on visual side when you see a cheap race in a cart. That kind of, I'll admit, for me at least, it detracts from the game just a little bit, not much. I mean, there's also a dolphin as well. I'm fairly certain that's an unlockable character. I just haven't done it yet. Now, the other thing is once you start the race, when you start the first race, you do the whole entire hold down the A button when the 2 appears. But when you start the second race, you always start off at a sort of go. And you hold down the A button when you see the 2 again. It's just weird that it's not from a dead stop to actually accelerating. You're already going. I'm not entirely sure why they did that. It might be a holdover from one of their other racing types that you can do. I think it's the knockout where you have to go through the racetrack and then you still have to place in the next race. And that might be where that comes from. I'm not entirely sure. I have yet to play the knockout race. Maybe some other point I'll do more in terms of after experience more of the game. I should put it that way. So the other thing is it feels kind of slow. Like not really, really slow, but it feels kind of slow. Which is really, really weird because the controls are kind of floaty just a little bit. It's really easy to oversteer while simultaneously, because of their floatiness, to understeer because you think you're going to oversteer and then you accidentally overcorrect in an attempt to counteract the oversteering. But it's really bad when you're in midair, when you're gliding and stuff like that, to easily miss where you're trying to go, mainly because the depth perception is absolutely horrible when you're gliding through the air. And, like, right here, there's certain parts where you're just... I mean, the only thing you can really do is hit the R button, build up a charge and stuff like that to speed up. Otherwise, there's just really nothing there to boost your speed and get through the area or even stay ahead. I mean, yeah, I guess you could charge a jump and then try a wall jump to get a boost, but I don't know how well that's going to work on a curved wall like that. And sometimes there'll just be stretches of road that are just nothing on the sides except for maybe some trees. Now, the one thing they sort of, it feels like they toned down was the rubber banding, where they assign a rival to whatever character you're playing, and you race them throughout the whole entire game. That seems to have been toned down, at least for now. I'll have to play a higher CCs to find out. But the designated rival, it feels more like there's 2 designated rivals, more or less. But they go back and forth, and they can actually lose. They're not nearly as aggressive right now, but I suspect on higher CCs that'll be different. I was not a fan of the rubber banding in Mario Kart 8, especially when you did like 150cc or 200cc, where you would just be fine the first 2 races and they would just ramp it up in the 3rd and 4th race, making it super hard. And I know for a fact that the game is programmed for the AI to cheat in order for it to keep up with you. At least in older versions of Mario Kart. And I'm fairly certain they might do the same thing here. I don't know. But I can't help but feel like that's what's going to happen, mainly because that's just a staple of Mario Kart at this point in time. So, visually, it's actually a fairly decent game. Nothing really too bad to talk about. There is one thing I will mention with Luigi, and I don't know if it's just me, but he's got some huge chunks of hand there, like really big, that they're extremely disproportionate. And same for his forearm; they're almost like Popeye arms to some degree. I mean, it got to a point I even loaded up Luigi's Mansion 3 to take a look at his arms. You probably can't see that's a little tiny. It kind of is the same. I feel like maybe they exaggerated his arms a little bit for Mario Kart. And the same goes for Mario. It's just not as noticeable because I haven't unlocked an outfit that's similar to that with Mario yet. I don't know. I still haven't collected all of his outfits yet. I don't know why it bothers me, but it just those huge hands with those huge forearms. It's just like, ugh. I mean, it's a nice looking game. I had to downgrade from my 4K capture card to my SD60, a much older card, because reasons that I can't figure out, even though I started recording on my 4K initially and it worked in my editing software, some changes were made to the settings on the system, only if like the HDR settings. And for whatever reason, I don't know what happened. Something somewhere, it just wouldn't let me use the footage from my 4K capture, but for whatever reason, it lets me use the footage from my SD60, which I had to figure out how to actually get that to consistently record as well, which just needed one change in the settings for that to record. So the footage isn't as good, but it fixed the picture issues. At least I'm fairly certain that I was having with the Switch 2, which is the weird thing. That's neither here nor there. That's a me issue with my capture cards. But I will say when I switch back to the 4K after using the the SD60, it like fixed the picture issues. It's really weird. I don't know what's going on. The whole entire thing surrounding the display of this console has just been super weird. Anyways, back to the game. So the other thing that sort of drives me bonkers about this game, still with the Grand Prix, are the blue shells. I absolutely despise them because I feel like you're punishing the player for winning. And like the amount of lightning that happens throughout the race is actually kind of annoying and always magically seems to be very inopportune for the player for the most part. But again, those are just personal preferences, particularly when in regards to the blue shell, which might be a little bit more viable and fair in terms of maybe having more people race. But when you have the PC, which will just absolutely at times go ham on you with blue shells. I've had 4 blue shells in one race. Yeah, it can get really obnoxious at times. But otherwise, it's still fun. So the free roam, like I said, is where I'm kind of enjoying the game for the most part. Particularly finding these P blocks and maybe the Peach medallions and figuring out ways to obtain them. It requires some basic knowledge of the mechanics, and it can get a little frustrating and tricky at times. Sometimes it's really stupidly simple. You're just going really slow, and you're like, should I be boosting? And you'll have plenty of time to just get through it. Other times, the timing is really, 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 really tight. And unless you have a knowledge of said mechanics or through a lot of trial and error, you just in general will not get these P blocks and get all the blue coins or whatever challenge they have going towards you. It's not always gathering blue coins. In this case, it's just like a time trial, and if you mess it up just a little bit, you will fail every time. Some of these require perfect runs, which is kind of irritating, but they are doable. And there's been a couple where I have hit 0 while I passed through the gate and it still counted, so thankfully for that. Or I've had less than a second before I passed through the gate in order to nail it. But I guess, sort of to emphasize my point, where I feel like they need to stiffen up the controls a little bit so you don't overcorrect, particularly when you're in air, is like right here where you try and see me land on that second group of blocks there. Yeah, it's way easy to accidentally oversteer or understeer. And on top of that, the depth perception again isn't that great. But that's pretty much my gripe in terms of steering. But like I said, they're so far have been pretty doable. Like I stated at the beginning of the video, you gotta have knowledge of the mechanics and how it works. Otherwise, you're gonna have an issue, and they really didn't teach you that in any capacity. And the manual only is only going to go so far. It really doesn't teach you or even let you practice it. It just kind of shows you and tells you the input. But doing the input and seeing it is two distinctly different things. So, in terms of actually exploring all around the Mushroom Kingdom, it's kind of fun, surprisingly, for a kart game, a Mario Kart game particularly. There's tons of exploration to do, not just riding on the roads and waiting for something to happen. You're encouraged to look in nooks and crannies and stuff like that to find things like coins, which unlock different carts, or you find different P blocks, or you can find the Peach medallion. You don't just simply drive for the sake of driving. And in some cases, you are looking for the costumes for the different characters. Some characters have more than others. Pauline, for example, only has 2. Same for Donkey Kong. While Peach and Mario both have 10. And I kind of suspect they probably will at some point be adding more. Hopefully it's not paid DLC or some costumes, because it's a bridge too far for me paying for costumes. Especially if they go like a Fortnite route where they're charging $12 for skin. Come on. But there's no pressure to just keep winning. You get to go at it as many times as you want in order to complete the challenge from the Peace switch or get the medallion, stuff like that. It's kind of relief from the pressures of having to always maintain first in a race. It's a lot more relaxing. Now there are definitely diminishing returns with this, because with each P block that I do, and I don't really feel like going back and finishing them again, it means that later on when I go and, let's say, try and get the costumes for the other characters, it's going to get a little boring driving around looking for food bags and trucks like that in order to get the various costumes you can for each character. Now, another thing I am going to sort of gripe about is you see that little circle in the bottom right-hand corner. It's a kind of mini map. It shows a zoomed out view so you can sort of see things around you. And you may have noticed that I checked the map a couple of times, and that's because I don't know what direction I'm going in. And I wish they would just add a compass somewhere in the interface. Just the mini map with the north, west, south, and east, so I can steer without realizing I accidentally got turned around, which can easily happen. And it has happened several times where I'm like, oh, I'm going the wrong way when I want to try and head a very specific direction to get to a very different part of the map without just fast traveling there, because there might be something in between the various parts of the map that I might have missed, which it has happened so far. The other thing is maybe a screen or something to indicate how much of things I have found, like how many P blocks have I not completed, or how many Peach tokens are left. Stuff like that. They just don't have that. They're more quality of life things than anything. But for the most part, I'm enjoying the free roam far more than the Grand Prix stuff. I mean, eventually that'll probably come to an end when I run out of things to collect or costumes to get. But until then, I like the free roam much more than the Grand Prix. Now, the one thing that sort of makes me wonder if they're going to bring in other characters outside of what they have for the initial roster is a song that plays during one of the challenges. And I guess I should touch on the music too because it sort of ties into that. A lot of the music is just familiar. You can pretty much tell what game it came from, and for the most part, most of it is recognizable. At times, though, it feels a touch inappropriate, like Luigi's Mansion theme, smack dab in the middle of the day in the desert. I don't know, that just seems out of place to me, especially when you have a ghost ship and a haunted castle slash mansion. But during one particular challenge, a song kept playing, and I'm like, that this is very familiar. Here, let me just play a little bit of it. So the string portion of that particular song reminded me of the Great Fairy song from The Legend of Zelda. Or maybe I'm just imagining it, but that's what I hear when it plays. And I'm sort of wondering if they'll bring Link over like they did from Mario Kart 8. All in all, this game feels like a celebration of everything Mario with pretty much a ton of characters and enemies from all sorts of Mario games in it. I mean, there are some issues. It's not perfect, and I kind of question that $80 price tag. Maybe if they have DLC in the future that's free, yeah, depending on the DLC and how much of it there is. But if they start charging for skins and new racers, I can see that going in a very negative direction for them. Yes, I only paid the $50 because I did the bundle. But if I paid the $80 version and they're like paid DLC, I think I would be mad. I don't quite think this is worth 80. There's a lot of little tiny issues with it. Some quality of life things they could have done and they just didn't do. Like, for example, keeping track of your progress in the free roam mode. 70 is kind of pushing it, in my opinion, in terms of how much I would pay, but 80, yeah, I'm kind of glad I got the $50 version. And overall, I am enjoying the game, and I probably would like to, at some point, have to try and get my friends together. We'll do a game day or something like that, and I'll go over to their houses, and we'll play like a 4-person race or something like that. Because we've always had fun playing with each other, and we kind of cheesed it a little bit in Mario Kart 8, and maybe we'll do the same thing here in Mario Kart World, where we would complete the higher CCs by having more racers, while one person would stay back and run interference, the other people would win. We'll see. Anyways, like I said, overall the game is enjoyable for the most part. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Have a good one.